Have we reopened? We're good? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our August 28th Town Council meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to just go over the evacuation procedure. In the event of an emergency, we have two doors to our left, another door in the front here. We would exit Town Hall, cross Middle Road, and await further instruction at the school administration building. If we could all now stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for our men and women serving in harm's way. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Okay, little more house rules. We are live streaming our council meeting, so we are on Zoom. For those of you that are streaming in or on your phone, if you're on Zoom, there's an icon that you can raise your hand and you'll be called upon. If you're calling in on your phone, *6 will allow you to mute and unmute your phone, and *9 will let us know you have a question. If you're participating either remotely or in session tonight, please state your name and address for the town clerk. And with that, we will begin with our roll call.
Mr. Katzman.
Here.
Mr. Gleason.
Here.
Mr. Hamilton.
Here.
Mr. Levesque.
Here.
Dr. Ryan.
Here.
Mr. Aguirre.
Here. Okay. And before our regular council meeting tonight, we also had an executive session, under Rhode Island General Law 4246(5)(a)(3). It was discussions regarding the matter of security, including but not limited to the deployment of security personnel or devices. No votes were taken during the executive session. Okay, moving on, presentations and recognitions. Tonight, we have a proclamation declaring September 2023 as National Service Dog Month. With us tonight, we have Maddie, joined by her service dog, JJ, as well as Kylie, who is in training and is being very well behaved in the front there. So I'm going to come down and read the proclamation.
I think it should be pointed out that Kylie sat up for the national anthem. Came to attention.
Kylie got a treat, I think. Okay, Town of Portsmouth proclamation declaring September 2023 as National Service Dog Month. Whereas we believe in the joyful, transformative power of the human canine bond and inclusivity of all citizens. And whereas in the United States, 64 million adults and children have a disability and only 16,000 service dogs from accredited training programs exist nationwide, and the need is growing. And whereas Canine Companions is a nonprofit organization that enhances the lives of people with disabilities by providing expertly trained service dogs and ongoing support to ensure quality partnerships. And whereas Canine Companions and their service dogs empower people with disabilities to lead life with greater independence by providing best-in-class training, ongoing follow-up services, and a deeply committed community of support. And whereas National Service Dog Month aims to educate our community about the benefits of service dogs and the laws protecting them. And whereas the town of Portsmouth continues to work towards becoming an inclusive community in which all citizens and their service dogs are embraced. Now, therefore, in recognition of service dogs and the adults and children with disabilities in our community, I, Kevin Aguirre, President of the Portsmouth Town Council, do hereby proclaim September 2023 to be National Service Dog Month in the town of Portsmouth. And I encourage all citizens to celebrate task-trained service dogs and be respectful of the rights afforded to the adults, children, and veterans who lead more independent lives because of their assistance. Thank you. Pause for a picture.
Let me just fix Kylie.
We got all night. JJ.
I've got, there we go.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
Did you folks want to say anything? No? I'm not putting you on a spot, but that's up to you. Kylie, you want to say anything?
Yeah. So I'm a volunteer puppy raiser for Canine Companions for Independence. So I will have Kylie when until next August. We just turned in Nestor for advanced training. So when they're 2 years old, they'll match hopefully with someone like Maddie matched with JJ. When he was 2 years old, he's 6 years old now. So we've gone to many businesses in Portsmouth and they've been wonderful with us, but I don't want businesses to be afraid if there's a dog that's not well behaved or you think it's not a service dog, maybe it's just an emotional support dog, that you can ask the person, is this dog trained to help you with what task? That's tasks trained. What does this dog do? What tasks does the dog perform to help you with a disability? Because otherwise they're not really a service dog. They might be an emotional support animal or a fake. Anyway, thank you very much for supporting tasks trained service animals in Portsmouth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on with our consent agenda.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we'll be sitting as the Board of License Commissioners. First item is a peddler license, mobile food establishment, new. The first one is LG's Ice Emporium LLC, DBA Kona Ice of Washington, Colorado. County, sorry. Been a long day. Washington County.
I think the ice might melt before they got here.
Hey, it's dry ice. 29 Lenox Ave, West Warwick.
Move to approve.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we have Pam's Grill LLC, DBA Pam's Grill on the Go, 2 Zor Street, North Providence.
Motion to approve. Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next one is Iron Swine LLC, DBA Masa Taqueria. Sorry, PVD, 125 Wickenden Street, Providence.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Motion to adjourn as the Board of License Commissioners.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we have minutes from our August 10th meeting, as well as our August 15th and executive.
Move to approve as presented.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And next we have our tax vouchers. It's a request approval for tax voucher 2023-0828-01.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And moving on to our town administrators report. Mr. Rayner.
Good evening, Mr. President, Town Council, ladies and gentlemen. I was asked to provide a quick update regarding the senior center project. So from a financial perspective, earlier this year in May, the Rhode Island Housing Credit Committee recommended approval to the Rhode Island Housing Board of Commissioners for the Portsmouth Senior Center and Senior Housing Development. The following week, the Rhode Island Housing Board of Commissioners then approved the funding package for that project. The town then submitted a Small Cities Community Development Block Grant on July 12th, requesting funds to acquire the senior center condominium component of this project. That's the part that's going to become the senior center office. This round of submitted CDBG applications are currently under review, and a tentative award announcement is expected late next month. From a construction building design perspective, the project engineer is currently working with Church Community Housing Corporation and moving closer to developing a 100% construction plan and specification document. So we're on track. They're on track to start construction in mid to late spring 2024. Unfortunately, the Prudence Island Planning Commission is unable to form a quorum on the scheduled meeting date of September 23rd. So there is an agenda item tonight to determine an alternate date. At the last meeting, I announced the state's municipal road program in my administrator's report. Since then, we have been able to sign on to the Rhode Island Department of Transportation portal, and it looks like we will be eligible for over $40,000 in state reimbursements for scheduled paving remaining this year. And then we are working on approximately $518,000 in reimbursements for next fiscal year. On Friday, August 18th, we experienced a rather severe thunderstorm with high winds and heavy rain. I'm happy to relay to you that other than temporary flooding and downed tree limbs, Portsmouth suffered no damage to report. So many thanks to Public Works for working through this event. And then lastly, Portsmouth Town Hall will be closed next Monday in observance of Labor Day holiday. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Okay. On to resignations and appointments. First item is the resignation on the zoning board of review for Mr. I think it's Langdon Harris.
Move to accept with regret and wish Mr. Harris the best of luck.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we have appointments. First is the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission.
Motion.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve Michael Mino for the ARBC.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next item, it's the zoning board of review. It's to the move Mr. Donovan to full member. He's currently an alternate.
Motion to appoint Mr. Donovan as a full member from his alternate position.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we have the zoning board of review, a reappointment for Mr. Eric Raposa.
You skipped up Larazano. Lorenzio,
I'm sorry. Lorraine.
which would be a
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
We
a
had-
new appointment.
new appointment as a alternate member.
New appointment
As a
as
second alternate?
now.
There's only,
So we have two vacancies.
right, so
So-
this will be the first alternate then, and then the next person will be the second alternate.
Yes, so now there was a request for consideration for the council to consider because we have to make two appointments. There was consideration for a more of a review or a vetting process for candidates, similar to how we've probably done the school committees in the past or when we've done interviews. Planning board, we can do that. If when we get additional members. At this point, we only have one applicant, Mr. Lorenzo. We have two vacancies. There was concern that with only 5 members on the zoning board, that they would potentially not have a quorum. But when the zoning laws had changed in the beginning of the year, there's only 4 members required for a quorum. So the zoning board, I believe their next meeting will not be until October. So we would have time to at least continue to advertise, see if we get additional applicants, and then make our appointments at one of our next 2 council meetings before zoning board. It's really up to the council.
He's a registered professional engineer.
Okay.
I think the zoning board could use the help of engineers.
If I may, Mr. President. Sure. I recall, the clerk can correct me, that we just recently advertised for,
Yes, it was in Thursday's paper. It was the first ad.
so being that we just recently advertised.
Mhm.
I think it's appropriate to, since we advertised on Thursday, which was when this agenda was made public, that deferring the decision until, I don't know, the next meeting or the meeting after that is not harmful, certainly, and may allow for others who are acting in good faith on the fact that we just advertised to put in their applications.
But if we,
I would second the notion of putting it off. Couple of, one is that he has extraordinary qualifications, there's no doubt about that. I was actually thinking that the nature of his qualification might suggest the planning board as opposed to the zoning board. But he talks about familiarity with a lot of things, but I am apprehensive that an open process must have enough time for anybody to apply regardless. And quite frankly, even though I like good qualification, I also like a person that just banged hammers, bang nails for a while too, you know? So I would move that actually we continue this matter to at least a month if we don't have a zoning board meeting. That sound appropriate?
Well, we won't have a zoning board meeting until October. My only caution here is that and I respect the request and the process. I do feel that we did advertise, or there was an advertising, and we did have an applicant, so he did follow the process. And so from that perspective, I feel that he is an engineer. He might be, he's an electrical engineer. No disrespect to electrical engineer. Mark-
civil engineer.
Civil engineer. I'm a civil.
Yeah, but he
I was-
applied on August 10th.
Yeah,
That was before.
no, because there was already an opening.
There was already an opening.
Oh, so this is
Yeah.
to fill an opening.
This is,
that-
there's two,
But we
yeah,
had-
There's-
advertised.
Right,
Yeah.
there was always 2 alternates, but
Yeah.
we've been short one.
we've been
So
short.
the alternate goes up to replace Mr. Harris. So now we have 2 openings. So we were already advertising for the first opening.
So he-
Right.
Filling the vacancy created by.
Mr. Borden.
Mr. Borden's
Okay.
resignation, yeah.
Right.
So now we've elevated the first alternate to regular. So the 2 positions we're seeking are really alternate positions. There's still 5 regular members. And if all things go well with the zoning board and they don't really need the alternates unless there's a situation that comes up.
Mr. President,
Sure.
for clarification, you mentioned that there was an applicant. Are you referring to someone who applied since Thursday's advertising?
No, I'm
Oh,
I'm
okay.
figuring that
I just
we
want to
had
clarify.
no,
Thank
we
you.
do have an applicant. So
Yeah.
now, we didn't have a process in place. So just out of, all fairness, he submitted. That's how we did it. Moving forward, I do agree that, it may make sense to make sure that we at least have a little bit more of a process for members of the planning board and zoning board. Those are very important positions in the town. They help govern our land use regulations and development within the town. So I do feel it's important that we have good candidates and good people participating on those boards. It's not a requirement that you have to be an engineer or anything like that. But it is, sometimes personal experience, knowledge can be very helpful when reviewing applications. I say that because I spent 15 years on the zoning board. So
And a point of order, Mr.
Sure.
President, Mr. Levesque made a motion. Was there a second? I'll second the motion.
Okay. And if I want to just speak to.
Hmm.
Process of advertising is extraordinarily important.
Hmm.
And it is not at all sufficient if it has not gone, given the people an opportunity to properly respond. So I don't really want to make, Mr. Lovizendo apologize. You shouldn't be controversial, but nonetheless, the process is advertise, opportunity for people to respond, and then a choice. It isn't that you were at one point interested and we never came forward with it. This kind of troubles me. So I really would prefer we put it off. I'm going to say the second meeting in September. If you're as a seconder will agree to that.
Yes, but you said about a month from now, so that would be
Yeah.
the second meeting in September.
Mr. President, I would just like to comment that I think that it'd be a shame not to put this gentleman in the position. For whatever reason, he came forward on August 10th, and to now say we're going to wait to see if there's anybody better than you or, to compare to you is not right. I mean, there's another position that'll be available. This person has a registered professional engineer. I was an engineer. That's a big status to gain. To become a registered professional engineer. I was not one. And it'd be a shame to not put him in. I know other people have come for positions in town and we've had to say to them, sorry, there's only one position and we have to choose between the two of you, but we'll keep your application on file. And, his application is sitting there. He's well qualified and we should be putting him in position. Thank you.
okay.
Mr. President, I really have to say I agree with Mr. Gleason. I mean, the advertising for this position occurred after Mr. Borden resigned, so that was a while ago. This application came in response to that.
Mhm.
Now a new position has opened
No,
up. Sorry.
No, the advertisement was done after the last meeting. So Mr. Borden resigned officially at the last meeting,
Right.
and then it went into Thursday's paper.
Okay, all right.
There was always a vacancy.
Right.
There was a vacancy. We did
So
have,
So this
so-
application occurred before the advertisement?
yeah, so he would have been applying for the vacancy that was already on the zoning
But
board,
not advertised for.
but not advertised for.
All right. Okay.
So now we're advertising, so there'll be
All right.
additional. So I mean, I think,
Well, then in a way, then it's maybe not fair to other people who might be a little slower to respond when we're asking them to respond to an opening.
I don't disagree. I just,
We don't have people banging down the doors and to turn somebody away who is requesting a
Well, but,
position.
no,
Just
I think
doesn't make
that's
sense to me,
reasonable.
especially somebody who's qualified.
Yeah, that's
But,
reasonable.
Councilman Hamilton, you know that there are people within this community that always think it's a fixed operation. And anytime you appoint somebody before a real opportunity to respond to an advertisement, will raise that question, however not legitimate that response is. So I think that we do it. Maybe we won't have any other response. I hope this gentleman doesn't take any offense, but I think really we are saying it in a non-offensive fashion. You're kind of saying we should be doing this regardless. And I think he would want to be properly admitted per our normal process as opposed to something that might put a shadow over him.
I don't think it'll put a shadow over him. And then I also believe that since the next meeting is in October, if we appoint somebody at the second meeting, that gives that person less time to become up to speed as to what's going on. If we appoint this gentleman now, he can get the information that is in front of the zoning board and hopefully make a more educated decision if he's required to, because he's an alternate, he might not even be required to.
The zoning board education, if I recall, is they throw you in the water.
Which
Am
is,
I correct?
which would be
Mr.
all the
Aguilar,
more reason to
did it?
give him more time to make decisions and become. up
He
to
will
speed.
have more time to sit at his home because they won't have a meeting for him to get a notion, because there's no, to the best of my knowledge, there's no prelim unless you've actually been before the zoning board. And this gentleman actually has, so that might be more prelim than we would ever give somebody who was coming raw from the town. So again, Mr. Hamilton,
I mean, my only concern is that he put the application, he put in his application and there was a vacancy. Even if we didn't know to advertise, he put his application in and there was a vacancy. So, you know, that part of me says, well, he was paying attention, he was interested and he knew there was a vacancy. So I think moving forward, we've identified that we want to have a process. We don't really have a formalized process for what we're going to do. So I mean, in all fairness, we could be having the same discussion with the next applicant. So I think in all fairness, I've served on the board. What's really important is that you have people on the board who are trying to do things that are what they feel is best for the town of Portsmouth. There's guidance documents, there are regulations, and we have a very good planning board and a very good zoning board. And they'll take their on the job training through that process. And that's really the best way to just attend the meetings and understand what the rules are. So I think that to Mr. Hamilton's point, it's hard enough to get people to serve on boards. And I think we have to at least give this gentleman consideration because he did put his application in.
If I may, Mr. President, I think
Sure.
we've all set our piece on it. Let's vote on the motions on the floor.
You got it.
Move on after that.
Gotcha.
I suggest.
So we had a motion and a second to table or to hold off,
Until
continue
the second meeting in September.
second meeting in September. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So the nays have it 4-2.
Mr. President, I want to make one.
Sure.
I was actually watching the zoning board of review on July 20th when they had the AP Enterprise, the Island Park volleyball court. At that meeting, somebody at that meeting announced that Mr. Borden was thinking of leaving, or had in fact indicated he was withdrawing from the zoning board. So, I mean, apparently, I believe this person who did not ask to be an alternate somehow was apprised after that July 20th meeting and on August 10th, put in his application. So, I mean, I think that unless you're a nerd like me and have nothing else to do and watch TV on a Thursday night, we ought to follow our rules, and our rules are advertise, then make a thing. And regardless of anything else, we were here for an advertised opening, and this fellow did not respond actually to the advertising.
I don't know if that's.
Technically, we had the meeting on the 15th of August. So he applied before there was technically an opening because you hadn't accepted Mr. Borden's. That's just how it went. That's all I'm saying. That was how the process was. We got it on the 10th. Mr. Borden resigned on the 15th officially. We advertised and it went on the 17th.
We don't have a motion yet. To appoint?
Yes,
Oh, do we have a second?
No,
to approve his,
Oh.
yes.
All right, I missed that.
You don't
Well, I- I-
we don't have a second.
We don't have a second.
I butchered his name and I apologize. for that, but I do move that we appoint Mr. Lorenzo.
Second. Excuse me. Okay,
Again, Mr. President, you either have
Yeah.
a process or you don't have a process. This didn't follow the process. And I'm actually kind of annoyed that people are trying to push it through.
I,
This
well,
is-
no,
this
Mr.
follow-
Levesque, hold on. I'm not sure we actually,
You-
I don't think we're not following a process.
You don't have a specific.
Right.
Process.
Right.
For adopted, it's.
If
You
you
asked,
have an advertising requirement, then the person who is applies after that advertising.
There is a-
If you don't
don't-
want to have an advertising process, that's fine. We don't.
we don't officially have an advertising.
Well, yes, we do. We have always had advertisement for all the openings going back to
No.
when I was on the town council.
But
It is not-
that's different than having a stated policy that we advertise for everything. We always have, which somewhat is a policy. We typically, when somebody resigns from whatever board it is, recycling committee, we request that the town clerk advertise. Now, unfortunately, she's been advertising for most everything because we have a lot of vacancies, whether it be the dog park or the zoning board or the planning board. But we don't have a stated policy. And I think the President brought that up earlier, that we need to maybe consider that.
Let me clarify something for you. A policy can be something you've written down, or a policy can be your past practice of the way you do things. The past practice, since I can remember, was that if in fact you had an opening, you advertise it. And if you wanted to make your advertising fair, you made sure that the time for applying was at least after the advertising appeared. And I think if Mr. Katzman is correct, the advertisement appeared before our agenda was finalized.
Well,
Excuse me, after our agenda was finalized. So this person, any person imaginary out there that might want to be in this had not had an opportunity, and that's not fair.
no, I think we have and I could be wrong, but I think we have a standing ad that identifies vacancies on boards that gets published. Not every week,
But it's
But-
hanging on the front door.
but
Yes.
we do put notice. That's my only point, is that I am trying to follow the process and past practice, and
And
I
I'll
think we
agree with-
are consistent.
I'll agree with Mr. Cashman that we've beaten this to death, but I'll move the question.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Lorenzo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So the motion passes 6-1. Thank you. 5-1. 5-1. Thank you. Sorry.
Well, actually, that was both mine, but you can put me down there.
Okay. Let's move on to our reappointment.
Move
To
to
the zoning
reappoint
board.
Mr. Reposa.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Old business. First item is to discuss the new date for the Prudence Island meeting. I know we're starting to get our back up against the wall with availability to get out there. And we were last discussing September. I gotta go to my calendar.
Originally, it was the 23rd. They do not have a quorum, and I know that our quorum was dropping quickly.
Yes.
So Mr. Spadaro had asked about October 14th.
October 14th.
The other issue we run into is the further we go into the season, the less and less people are on Prudence Island.
I know.
So those who maybe want to be served will not be, which goes back to the point,
I know.
they can put things on the agenda and do it via Zoom a lot easier than us trying to coordinate
I know.
to get there.
I mean, I'm willing to, our regular meeting is what's our regular meeting on October?
The ninth and last.
No, it's the
10th.
10th, and then the next meeting after that is the 23rd.
Right. So it's really, and their availability is, they have the 14th available? Or we don't know?
Yes.
Because if the 14th would probably be the only Saturday I could do it. Just because we're running into that time of year. So Daniela's not here, so if we can try for the 14th. If
I'll be there.
Council, you're available for the
Yeah.
14th?
Do I have a quorum?
Yeah. You'd be, Mark, you're away.
Just checking.
All right, so we will have at least 4 members. And if others can make it, great. But so let's try to schedule it for the 14th.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. That was easy. Let's move on to new old business number 2. It's monthly finance report.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the council. So as of the end of July, the town was 1 month or 8% through fiscal year 2024. Year-to-date general fund revenues were at 4.4% of total budget, which is down compared to June, but that's expected the month after a quarterly tax payment. The primary sources there were tax receipts, state aid, interest income, and building receipts. And year-to-date general fund expenditures were at 9.7% of total budget, which is above the monthly average, and that was driven primarily by capital projects, paving projects, insurance premiums, and civic support. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we have old business number 3. It's a proposal for converting the old Cogshell Elementary School building into the new Portsmouth Youth Activity Center. Mr. Ingram. And just I'm going to give you, we'll give you your time. But I do want to just recap for those, some of the council members were here in 2019. And the information that you had provided us was based on your previous submission from 2019 with some updates, correct?
Right.
Okay. So, and I had to go because it's been a few years. Just give me a second. It's yeah. Just hand it to Jen and she'll pass it around. It's been a few years and we had COVID in between. But back at our meeting on September 9th of 2019, you had given us, the council, a presentation. And in 2019, the council basically approved your concept in 2019. We approved your concept of you had a plan and you were going to try to gather support and work out an agreement.
No one told me that.
That was, well, that was the decision of the council back in 2019. That night, and I think, I mean, that was in the minutes and we read it. So in 2019, the council voted 5-2 to allow you to come back to the town administrator and the solicitor with a more formal plan for use of the facility. Because you had some ideas, you had some, we needed a more formal plan. So back in 2019, we did say, yes, you could do it. And so really, I know you wanted to give us an overview tonight. But I think the bottom line was in 2019, we said yes, but you needed to come back with a plan. So that's kind of where we're at tonight. I wanted to at least make you aware of that. Refresh your memory. I had to refresh my memory. I had to review the tape and I had less gray hair then.
Excuse me, Mark, you're not 80 yet, are you? Not yet? You're not 80 years old yet?
Not that I'm aware.
No.
I might have forgotten.
I know. I say this politely. I love Portsmouth. It's been great for our family. We've given a lot back. And this project, and now I'm just about 80. There are a lot of younger people that need to be in this project, that want to be in the project. They've asked me to spearhead it, but there are a lot of very bright people in the construction industry, business, finance, who know what they're talking about. a lot more than I do. And yeah, did I serve 20 years in the Newport Hospital Building Committee? Yeah. Have I built a bunch of stuff? Yeah. I don't know. The more I do, the less I know. Okay. This cover sheet that I put in for today, I passed it around. Everybody needs a copy. They're around here. A quick comparison of the two projects. Talking to Keith. Great family. Question is tearing the building down or utilizing it for a Portsmouth Youth Activity Center for children and adults. If you call it a youth activity center, the older people are going to love it. Youth, not an old timers. All right. So a quick comparison, demolish and the Coggeshall School to eventually replaced by Little League Field. And I'm all for baseball. All right. I'm for all sports, for the girls and boys. People know me pretty well. I'm basically a jock. All right. And it's important. It's important for our town. It's been important for our town.
Mhm.
In talking to the baseball coaches, Steve Lake, All-American for UConn, played after that, and other people, Little League coaches, I said, what would be more productive for our Little League program? Having 2 or 3 classrooms on the south part of the building, Coggeshall building, with a pitching machine. Cost nothing to do it. Have a batting cage, all right, a pitching machine for girls softball, high school, whatever. A pitching machine available 12 months a year. Versus putting a baseball field there, which will be available for the kids to use basically 3 or 4 months a year. Okay, there's no comparison. I have not talked to one person at the town council, excuse me, at this building here. What do you call this? The center, the
This town hall?
town hall. There we go. I have not talked to one person who has not supported what I'm suggesting. And I've been very honest with them. I said, you won't hurt my feelings if you think there's a better option. And one of the problems is the decision you guys thought of coming up with, all right, had to do with the Coggeshall School analysis of alternatives. And Rich Tulipsky, great guy, talked to him about it. The proposal was done based upon alternatives for a school. It's not going to be a school.
But this was back in 2019.
But that's how the decision comes around. I just made it was all the numbers in here are not right.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't move forward with a plan.
So there's another one right here, all right, which was done in 2021. Okay. A lot more,
I'm with you.
a lot more factual, and this one is only 366,000. Okay,
Mhm.
so today is probably high 4s. Okay, so that's why I use the number 500,000.
Okay.
All right. When I say something, if you don't agree with me, please let me know. Ollie, I appreciate it. Demolishing that building at a cost of roughly 300,000 to 500,000. Let's use a 500 as end result with the dirt grass field if we demolish it, as compared to making it a youth activity center for children and adults. All right. I went through our senior center down there. There is basically no physical activity in that facility. Okay. This facility, I will guarantee you, will have physical activity for children and adults. Because ironically, for the youth and the senior citizen, they're very similar. People slipping and falling, exercises like that, they're very similar. Living in an over 55 community in Florida with a lot of hip issues, I know what I'm talking about. So having this facility for our children and the seniors, it'll be, tearing down a building, a 25,000 square foot usable space building. All right, according to the tax assessor, 25,000 square feet to tear it down. When we got the contractors in our town, Pete Raposa, all the guys, right, that want to give back and want to make it work. I mean, Pete was great guy. The son's not here. I mean, when he says, if you can't pull this through, Duncan, I'm going to start swearing at you. I said, Pete, I've been trying. All right. It's for the town. It's for the kids. Number 2. academic support for our schools. All right. When the community gives back and helps motivate our children to be more successful academically, the football coach, the baseball coach, the basketball coach, the drama teacher, the ballroom dancing, when they motivate the children to try harder, sometimes that works better than a parent trying to motivate their own kids. Because you never know who the kids listen to. My son didn't listen to me. He listened to Andy Belcito. Changed our family life. His junior year in high school, he lived in his closet, slept with a dog. I thought he was nuts. One of the best decisions he ever made. And I was very thankful to this day. But that's an extreme, don't get me wrong. Just because my dog sleeps in my bed with Jeannie and I, you know, but the next specializing in demolition and recycling, Venangro Corporation, December 21. As I said, this is even more detailed. So the number of the 500 grand to tear it down. All right, I can't argue with that. Instead of spending $500,000 to have a spectacular facility, the facility in Bristol, in Tiverton, went over there. That's a commercial facility. Kids aren't using that unless they have money. Okay, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure someone supports kids going there too. But this is designed for Portsmouth youth activities. All right, drama, dance, ballroom dancing, all the other sports, everything. And one of the most important items of this whole thing is on the one-story building, the one classroom, and having a desk all the way around the classroom, a desk for each activity in town. Badminton, dance, drama, volleyball, football, basketball, hockey, every organization that there is in town. Because right now they don't know each other. It's amazing how many people don't know what other activities are run, how they're run, because they don't communicate. And I will guarantee, I'll give you my wife's car, putting them all together with their desk there, all right, in a file cabinet, so that when that person goes on, the files are still there. All right, that's, I have file cabinets of stuff that shouldn't be there. All right. And I'm just saying politely that that is a big, big asset, all right, to this whole proposal. All right. The volunteers, Travis Plumbing, Duncan, looking at that, inspected, the heating system could work. Because you know what, wouldn't be a bad idea. I said, what's that? Put in solar. So today, that's why I was a few minutes late, from Boundless Energy. That's what they do, commercial solar stuff. All right. They're there, the whole wall. I said, you think there's enough solar space here to take care of heating this building? He said, no question about it. And nice thing about Rhode Island, when you overproduce a few months, those months where you're not producing, you get credit for it. Some states you don't get that. It happens in Rhode Island. Now, that's just an outside person, a plumber, suggesting that. You know what I'm saying? So the people who care about our town, all right, this project, I can't tell you the amount of energy that's coming back to me. And I, you know, at 80 years old, I need some, there's a lot of younger people out there too right now, a lot. They're asking, please follow through in this, Duncan. So how you set it up is up to you. And that's what I'm suggesting. Now, just get the people to say, go ahead. And you need approval for different things, go to the town council, but have that group be together, all right, as a group, and not a plan today, all right, that may change in 2 months or 3 months. It's going to change because we want to make it better. All right. So when you asked for me to do a finalized plan, I said, I don't buy that. That's not good management. All right. If you're lucky, it's great management. All right. But for all of us who've been around many industries and businesses, and especially construction, and especially for youth activities, all right, youth activities. At one time, we had, as an example, 32 kids playing college football at Portsmouth. Right now, there are 2. At one time, we were tops in the state academically in our SAT scores for our football team. We're no longer there. Our town needs support from the people that want to give back. And that's all my proposal has ever addressed. Now, as far as the ownership of it and all the rest of the stuff, no one wants any money. All right. The mold and mildew of a friend who owns Export Technology. It's going to cost what they estimate like 80 some $1,000. It's going to cost us anything. Nothing. People want to give back. All right. And they're willing to do it if they have the money to do it. Not everybody does, but those that have it want to give back. So there are plenty of opportunities out there. All right. And I think us to take advantage of it makes a lot of sense. Going over to the place in Tiverton, or excuse me, Tiverton, all right, beautiful big, that's a commercial entity. That's not a youth activity center. Right? They do have youth activities in there. Someone find whatever, it's different. All right. And what we're suggesting for the Cogswell School, having the people, all right, from the town who want to give back. All right. I don't see any negative part about it at all. Right. And there are people that don't have the ability to do it. All right. And there are many, many people that do have the ability. They're honest, law-abiding, who want to serve on a committee to serve. Right. Just like you guys serving on the town council. All right. And I say that politely. This project will be a big project for our town. I will guarantee you one thing. Almost every piece of property will increase in value more so than another town if we have this facility, as I'm suggesting. There's no doubt in my mind, because guess how many other towns in the state have a youth activity center? One, Little Compton. It's a room about this size. Our building inspector, all right, he's the one that started it, going way back. By my standards, that's not a youth activity center, but that's what they call the community center. So not to beat a dead horse, but please, whatever, just say, let's get going and let's get a committee. Whether you have Raposa, you got Mike Wrinkle, you got Travis Plummy, you got different people that are willing to serve. Okay. Putting the different organizations and how you run youth soccer. Tucker West was talking about it. I said, you don't mention hockey. I said, oh yeah, hockey, but it's not. He said, the batting cage. He said, that would be a spectacular place for hockey pucks. I said, really? So having the net all the way around, he says, that'll change our hockey program dramatically. Never occurred to me. So people like that, I mean, Keith and I think we know about a lot of sports. We used to. You're still learning. I've forgotten. But my point is, there are a lot of people in town who really want to give back or are interested in academics, leadership issues, all right, in the sports. And that's all I can say. That's why I did not do another presentation. All right. I just philosophically pick 5 or 6 and I'll help you pick them, whatever. All right. To be on a committee, women and men, all right, for all the different activities. And
I hear what you're saying.
And that's my pitch. If you don't want to do it, that was my pitch 4 years ago. And what has been done? The building, and I say this politely, who's ever is in charge of that building? All right. If there was in the property management business, he'd be fired. Okay, or she.
Yeah.
So apparently, from what you have said and what the council president has indicated from his recollection in the minutes, there was a failure to communicate. The council apparently felt they had sent you off to do your magic, as only you can do.
With your help.
And come back with, if you will, a more solid proposal. First off, I do want to say one, Duncan, I respect Duncan. I've known Duncan for a god awful long period of time.
Before Whitehead.
And as I indicated, actually, last time I was speaking to him, I said, you have never tried to deceive me. You have sometimes exaggerated a little bit, but I don't believe you have ever tried to deceive me. He's a person of a lot of energy. So here we are. We have a building which I drove around, which has not been boarded up. It's not been secured in any fashion. That concerns me. Whatever damage and problems it had at one time, it probably has more. And that strikes me as something that should have been looked at one time, even if the plan was to demolish the building. Second, Mr. Ingram says he has a group of citizens in this town, and quite frankly, I have no doubt that if given the opportunity, Some of the names he had mentioned to me, and I know they are willing, more than willing, to give back to this town. They are people of this town who are committed to this town. And if given an opportunity, would do any number of things to assist this town. So that is not really a question. Question of putting it together and if this is the right thing to do, that's another question. One of the things is that I saw that we have a plan here that Mr. DeNegro put forward in terms of demolishing. I would point out to you that it is not what I call a legitimate response to a request for proposal. And the exceptions that he doesn't cover are pretty significant. Okay, in terms of getting rid of almost all of the hazardous and regulated materials, depending on, yeah, Duncan, go ahead. Have a seat.
No, I'm just,
Come on. Getting rid of all the materials there. And it seems to me that it's quite a costly endeavor to just get rid of it. And his is not a solid proposal at this time. He may have had a different structure in mind. When I was on the council, I know you tire of hearing me say that phrase. We originally rented it in 1988 or 1889 to family something or another, and then to the Penfield School. And the Penfield School, quite frankly, was doing a lot of work. They were paying us a lot of money in rent, and they were also doing a lot of work on the interior of that building to make it, because it quite frankly was, I don't think I'll get into too much. It was a school for all those people that lived down the Sandy Point. You know what they're like, right? And so they weren't looking for something cheap. They were doing a good job. And that's 1990, 20 years ago. I've read the report that there was apparently a great deal of problems in the site that need to be remediated. The question is, can they be remediated for less money than it would cost to demolish? And if it were remediated, would it be something that would have value to the town as a structure? When we actually rented it to the Penfield School, we were kind of walking around thinking we had a white elephant, that we didn't have something that would be utilized by anybody in the community. But we now have a fairly comprehensive report on recreation needs of the town of Portsmouth. I would point out that there is a suggestion that we might, by 2030, need some adult baseball fields. But most of the things, athletic fields, I would say one we have or two can be available almost anywhere. Okay, so that's not an issue. The other thing I would want to say to people is, when you go out and ask people for money to build something, a lot of people will remember what you did to something that you got money from them before. Now, Cog Show probably goes back 80 years. I mean, I don't know how far. Matter of fact, Mr. Cog Show was a superintendent of schools, used to drive around on a wagon with books in it and hand them out to kids. I know, I learned that from Steve Pappas. But anyway, it seems to me that the town of Portsmouth spent considerable money, probably for the time, to build this building. And if in fact we can make good use of it, we ought to do so. So my suggestion, and then I will stop, is that clearly direct Mr. Ingram that you have two charges to do. Somebody's got to board that thing up. Somebody's going to make it secure, because quite frankly, I am positive right now there's at least one high school kid that's had a beer in that place. I'm just saying, okay, but board it up and make it secure. And two, come back with something that's not a letter. Something that says, this person, this person, and this person will be willing to do this type of work. We believe we can do it in this period of time. We would need this type of structure in order for us to maximize our effort. And here's the proposal. And bring it back and we can vote it up or down.
I'm not gonna do that, and it's not gonna work.
What's that?
I'm not gonna do that, and it's not gonna work, Chuck. You'll fail. You
Okay.
need to have people thinking, because it changes, like this, the solar thing just happened. They've been in there 4 years talking about it. Why did not someone make a suggestion like that? I mean, things happen like that. For instance, activities for the senior center. I always was gonna do it for just.
Have you ever fished?
You
Or
think-
have you ever cut bait?
Yeah. I've
Because
done
you
it.
always have to do one or the other, Dunk, and at one point or another, Dunk. Mr.
Okay.
Ingram, excuse me, we are not going to buy a pig in a poke. We are either gonna have a plan now. I earlier had mentioned to some people, I was on the building committee, my name's on the little thing. And we started running into problems with change orders. Okay, and if you know about building, you know that a change order is something that a contractor puts the kids through college on. Okay, so we stopped having change orders. What I'm saying to you, you have a finalized plan. Now, when that plan is finalized and you come up with some great idea, you can come back to us and we'll change the plan.
Did you look at the diagram, Chuck? Did you study this? Seriously, did you look at this? You didn't.
Are you talking about the diagram you handed out as we were sitting here tonight?
That was handed out before also.
That
Same
that
way.
was the one, that was the one from.
This is the one.
2019.
All right, there are 2 rooms there are for commercial rents. All right, one of them was Mathnasium. All right, and I said to the gentleman, great guy, Doug Stern started it. He had a dramatic influence in our children. All right, someone else now. I said, what do you pay here? Oh, I think $2,000, $2,500. So I said, if we could get a youth activity center, would you consider taking a space there? He said, I'd pay double to be in that space. All right, next
Mr.
one.
Ingram, I'm gonna ask you to come back.
I'm not gonna, Chuck, either you accept what I'm suggesting or find a better solution. Calling upon the people of this town, like Pete Reposa, right? Great guy. He's so upset about this. This is, have him just turn it over to a committee, Duncan. I said, I've tried that.
Unfortunately, I think we.
I don't know what to
we
say.
can't. Well, we've been down this road a little bit when we looked at the senior center and options for renovating the Ann Hutchinson School. It's a
That's
town property.
that's a big difference. I've been through that school.
No,
every
no,
part of it.
but the principle is the same from a framework of it's a municipal property, it's a municipal building. So the town has to play by the municipal bidding rules and everything else.
I understand, unless it's volunteers.
No,
Yes, that's a fact.
we,
I'll
we've-
give you my wife's car if that's not true. If it's a volunteer, all right, people are allowed to volunteer for public facilities.
Mr. President, if I could
I know.
interrupt, okay, Mr. Ingram, what I'm gonna suggest
So if someone wants
that
to,
you come back with something that really indicates that we don't have to abide by municipal rules
I didn't say that.
and your wife's title, all right, signed by her.
You got it.
And we will weigh the 2 of them and figure out if we
What
just
I-
got
what I-
ourselves a new car.
You twisted what I said. I said, if people volunteer, they're allowed to volunteer on a public utility, all right, a public process, a public building. That's the law. All right, I'm not
maybe-
saying
maybe
going
we
up,
have to work through that. So
Not-
I think what happened.
for instance, let me, just- for instance, like on the,
Somebody could volunteer their time, but if we have to start procuring equipment. and
Yes.
Stuff, it's gonna go under the municipal.
you're right, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
if you don't we have a committee for this.
I agree,
It's called the Recreation Committee. Director sitting right, the chairman sitting right in the back there.
whatever, then
So if you want to send this to a committee, have them to look at it for a month or 2, let's do it.
Keith, I tried to get into the building with our town manager.
I don't think.
Guess what happened? I wasn't allowed in, so we had a meeting, all right, with the fire chief, correct? Where was?
Fire marshal.
Was he, were you there?
He was the. But
Fire marshal.
here,
I wasn't allowed in the building,
I understand that.
all right, and I was in the building with 9 other contractors before, all right, 3 years ago, but not now.
But here's my concern. Not one of those 9 contractors is here with you. And it's great that they all want to give back to the town. My fear is when the rubber hits the road, they go, oh my God, this is a lot of work, and they disappear. The same thing happened at the Brown House. We had a great volunteer organization that was gonna rebuild it,
Let
and
me,
it never happened.
Keith,
And we got stuck with it and then we had to finish it.
I'm getting impatient. What would have
Me
been
too.
wrong with trying this 3 years ago? If it didn't work, we'd be right where we are right now. But if it did work, we'd be light years ahead for our children. All right, if we tried it. All right, and you have to trust the people in town. There are a lot of bright people want to give back. Maybe they haven't talked to you. For some reason, they go reach out to me. All right, and I'm saying, let's utilize that resource that this great town has. And it's embarrassing to say that we're not willing to listen to some of these people, and that's their business. All right. I have a problem with that. I'm sorry. There are so many assets in this town that want to bring back and want to give back, all right, to make it a better town for our children and the seniors. Walking all through the senior center today, or Friday. All right. There's no comparison how that facility will be an asset for seniors. I'm not talking a little asset. It'll be a dramatic asset. All right. And I never realized it was that bad for seniors until I got to Florida, owning the place in Florida. I really. So I share that with you, but there are plenty of people that want to serve. If you want a black and white, oh, this is a plan. I'm sorry. I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know if anybody does if they're telling the truth. I'll give you a plan. It may not be the plan that we agree to 2 or 3 months from now, because it changes. That's just, but there are plenty of people out there, all right, with a leader, plenty to get the group together. All I can say is for our town and make it a better town.
I'm gonna politely say it again. We have a group and a committee for this. Have you brought it to the Recreation Committee?
This,
Yes.
no,
Why?
because
Why?
the original plan, as you know, was
Was for you to develop a plan.
No, it was for the town, to lease it to a third party. All right, and the town has nothing to do with it. That was the original concept. Because just what you're talking about, you can't make decisions. That was the original concept, was to have the town lease that property, the buildings, to the Portsmouth Youth Activity Center, 501c3. That was our original plan. If it's not going to work, fine. But what you're suggesting hasn't worked in the last 4 years. And you're saying it's going to work all of a sudden?
Well,
I'm gonna ask a question again. In the past 4 years, have you scheduled a presentation with the Recreation Committee to bring forth this idea?
No,
Let's start there. I would move that we request to forward this proposal to the Recreation Committee,
okay.
ask for their information, have them come back and give us a presentation or recommendation. And we'll go from there if they can do it. February 1st, 3 months good enough? I'm
Okay,
sorry, for folks at home,
of this month? Good. I'll be happy to be there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll second that, and I have a
Sure.
couple comments.
Sure.
Among our the information was that this is the last time this came before the body was September of 2019. Things have changed since then, but what has not changed is what this then council voted to do that night. Actually, Mr. Hamilton, it was your motion. If you find that video on our YouTube Town Council Portsmouth page, at 1 hour, 41 minutes in, is roughly where you make a motion to, not quite verbatim because I was typing as I was listening, but to task the town administrator and solicitor to entertain a proposal of agreement with Portsmouth Youth Activities Center, which would then have to come back before the council because whatever that proposal might be would have things we might want to review, change. And you pointed out, Mr. Hamilton, that evening that the written proposal that was in front of us that night had in fact changed through the course of it being described. It was not. So we were unclear on what we, fundamentally, any town council is responsible for the responsible stewardship of our properties and for any facility into which members of the public may enter, we have an obligation to make sure it's safe to code and all that. So you explained that it had changed. There were things, in the contract that we specifically would do by the town and by Portsmouth Youth Activity Center, and we would know.
Get to 2023, please, I'm running out of time.
Certainly. But it's important that we understand the last action this council took.
No, it isn't.
It absolutely is
Yeah, it is.
because
Has
this
the
is
building
the
been
identical.
torn down?
If I may, point of
Hold
order,
on.
I have the
Hold on.
floor.
Okay.
I have
I'm making
the
the point
floor.
of order. You're talking.
And because I have the floor, Mr.
Gentlemen,
Levesque.
gentlemen,
Mr.
gentlemen.
Levesque.
Point of order overrides your having the floor.
And what is your
I'm
point of
making
order?
a Point of order, you don't get to ask that.
And what
The
is your?
chair, the chair gets that. I'm asking that we don't deal with 2019. We deal with 2023 because the building is still there.
Okay.
The circumstances are exactly the same as they were back in
No,
2019.
hold on, Mr. Levesque, let me, and I think
Because it's sat for 4 years and done nothing.
I think
So
Mr.
he didn't
Katz-
do anything with it and that somehow changes his.
hold on,
I promise you that I will get to 2023, promise. you.
let Mr. Gaspar finish.
To know why and how we are here. That was the motion. Go off, work with the town administrator and solicitor. It would be irresponsible to say, here's a lease, go off, we don't know what you're gonna do, but here's a lease. That would be irresponsible. We needed to know exactly who's gonna do what. I appreciate, now here we are, 2023. Tonight, when you circulated this and spoke in front of us, Mr. Ing, was the first this council learned that you not only didn't do that was voted on, but you did it intentionally, and we can all take your rationale for that as reasonable or not, that's fine. Nonetheless, it's not what we expected the last time council met on it. Now, tonight, you talked about volunteers who would do things.
I was always in there.
And I think that's great. Yes, absolutely. It's always in there. What
Always.
was lacking was, you mentioned an individual owns a construction company. Are they actually willing to commit some hours of time or materials? We don't know. It's lovely to have people in the community say, I love Portsmouth because I love Portsmouth. I volunteer time to Portsmouth. But if we are going to sign a contract that places a property into somebody else's control on the premise that it won't cost Portsmouth something because volunteers are going to spend their money. Well, we need to know what the scope of that is. And maybe it's nothing and the town has to come up with lots of money. That's okay. We just need to
The
know.
town's gonna come up with $500,000 to demolish the building.
I have yet to see that in a.
It's in writing. You had it right here.
I've yet to see it presented to the council in an annual budget to commit those funds to do.
No.
So I know what it costs to
I-
do. We all know what it would cost to do.
This went to Town of Portsmouth Public Works Department. Yeah, that's who requested it. right.
We're not, we were looking at options for what to do with the property. So
Sure.
we have not committed any money.
I
to the
know.
project.
There was a motion on the floor.
And that motion was.
The motion was to
Seconded
refer,
it with the- send
to
it
refer it to the
recreation.
rec
Correct,
committee.
correct. So I will wrap up, Mr. Levesque.
I will be happy to share this with your rec director. I'll do everything I can to make it work.
That's where it's
I
going.
will share one thing. The last big project we had in this town, all right, was the high school gymnasium. Okay, it was gonna tear down the E-wing. That was the plan. That was what the architect, 2 architects, tear down the E-wing and put the basketball court there. Okay, I was against it. I fought it big time. Okay, I hired an engineer. I hired the architect. All right, didn't cost the town anything. But more importantly, people wrote checks. My neighbor wrote a check for $200,000 for that project. No one knows that. 200 grand.
Think they don't know.
You don't know, I got a lot of neighbors. You don't know which one it was. My point is, people want to give back, but you got to give them the opportunity. All right. And what I'm suggesting is that the committee be happy to meet, but I will guarantee it needs to be a committee who knows what the heck they're doing. All right.
And
About it. And it changes. You can't keep it with one rule.
I hear what you're saying.
Mr.
Duncan,
President.
and hold on, we got a motion and a second. It was for discussion. Were you finished?
I finished.
Okay.
Right, so again, I know it's unpleasant, well, it's restricting your planning to ask for something more concrete, but we commissioned a engineering report in 2019, the Jacobs report. And the facility deficiency cost assigned to the Coggeshall School was $1.7 million in order to bring it up to where it would be fully functional and able to be used by people. There was also a 5-year life cycle cost of an extra $400,000. So it's almost $2 million according to the 2019 Jacobs report to rehab the Coggeshall School. Its replacement cost at that point was 2.7. So fixing it cost almost as much as just raising the building and replacing it. The Hutchinson School is also in bad shape. But we were approached by Church Community Properties, which was an organization that had a track record of being able to raise funds and rehab buildings for specific purposes. They came with a very concrete proposals to how they were going to do it and the timetable in which they were going to do it. And I think before we agree to consign what's left of the Coggeshall School to someone, we really need to have something specific like that. We can't in good conscience sort of say, well, we hope that when you take this building over, that good things will happen. Before we can vote on it, I think we need some specific information, particularly since such large dollar amounts may potentially be involved.
The dollar amount you just talked about, the price to build that building today is around 12 to 15 million dollars. Okay, that's the price today. All right, 3 contractors. That's the price today.
Okay.
All right, the number you said there, all right, wasn't
This
even
is from
relevant.
2019.
Yeah, that wasn't even relevant then, but right now, it absolutely unequivocally isn't even close.
Right.
All right, so I'm not gonna argue
So
about it.
it's a much larger amount.
Let's go to the Recreation Commission.
So
I'll be happy to communicate with them. If we can pull something off, fine.
Right, but I think we need some specific plans and numbers.
So, and that'll, we've got a motion and a second.
Let me make,
Mr. Gleason wants to.
Since we're still in the discussion stages and you were cut off, I would really like to hear what you had to say. You and what the fire chief also has to add. My own comments are, I think that
Yep.
if you're gonna save anything, you might be able to save the north side of the building, but I think the south side, which is much older, has too much mold and spore damage in there to consider. Plus you have steam powered boilers in there. When I worked for Penfield School, all I heard was stories about how bad the building was to try and keep it up, fix plumbingly, keep the heating system working. And that was back in prior to 2004.
guess what?
Been sitting there ever since.
Export Technology is the only company that Yale, that's on their campus, any classroom, apartment, lab, anything. The product from Export is the number one because it's non-contagious. It's not poisonous. All right, they fog a room, guaranteed. It penetrates through carpet, walls, etc. Will not go through oil-based paints. All right, the only company. The owner of that company, all right, and the local rep is donating the whole product. That's $80,000. It's going to be given, all right, for our group. And all the people in my committee know that. All right, that group we've talked about. So that's all been part of the formula. There's so much people want to give back. All right, let them do it. And it's not going to happen. A black and white program. Well, we need $500,000 for this or that. It's going to be flexible because someone say, well, I'll take care of that. For instance, someone made a joke, painting the outside of that building, right? Give me 2 weeks, 3 weekends, I guess they said. I have 50 people, 50 mothers and fathers out there. The whole building could get painted. All we have to do is pay for the paint. I said, you serious? He said, no question. They're lined up. They want to do it. They want to participate in it. The solar panels on the top.
Mr. Ingram,
My point is, people want to give back.
I have no doubt.
People want to give back. Let them.
Project. I have no doubt. I don't want to see the building unused in its current condition.
Why not? You've done it for 4
I
years.
don't want to see it in its current condition. I've always wanted to see some reuse there. But I'm looking at the reality of an old building that has been sitting there. You should come forward with your proposal and start with the mold remediation. Nobody should be in that building at this point.
Right.
Is my understanding of the condition there.
So
I was in the, not in the building.
let's move this along.
I gotta tell you, I go back and the lady next to Rich Rayner's office, the personnel, what's her name?
Lisa.
Lisa, very nice, very, very nice. And she said, well, I was just in the building this past week. So here's the lady going into that building. All right. And I'm not allowed to go in the building with my other contractors. And we met that day at the,
Lisa's not here.
no, she's not here. Excuse me. We met at the Glen, all right, to do that meeting. Oh, we can't, then the fire marshal,
all due respect, I'm gonna move.
The fire chief says you can't go in the building. I can't go in the building, but she could go in the
Okay,
building.
let us vote now. So,
Well,
Chief, do you need to speak on this? Okay, you may.
excuse me.
Just on that point, I was asked by my fire marshal about, he was going to that meeting. And we said, it's public, it's a municipally owned building. And unless you're an employee, we're not letting anyone in the building.
So that's,
What I just wanted to bring up and maybe remind the council or refresh your memories on certain things. I know there's been a lot of competing interests over the years. I've been here 5 years and I've heard different things about Cogswell School and what it could be used for and whether it would be the senior center or something else. In 2009, a plan was paid for, an architect was paid for by the town and a plan was drawn for a fire station there. Portsmouth Fire Department covers more square miles by far out of a single station than any other community in the state. We have the longest shoreline to cover and we're second to one to westerly, I believe, in square miles of water. And we're first if you took the landmass of Prudence and Hog and plugged that in. We have one station. We go outside the limits in time responses, both north and south, according to ISO. I just wanted to bring that up. We have needs too. Land is getting less and less. I don't know how many other parcels the town currently owns that would be a good location for a station. I wanted to bring that point up too.
thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to refer this to the Parks and Recs Committee for study and Mr. Ingram can make his presentation to the Parks and Recs Committee. And then we'll wait for feedback from that. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. You'll have your say at the Parks and Recs.
Let's get it done. The bottom line is the decisions that we have made as citizens and as council in the last 4 years is not right for our town. I say that politely. Okay, I do.
Understood.
And on that note, I'm not running for office.
Thank you. All right.
President, before we
Yeah.
move to new business, I'd like to make a motion that we move new business 2 ahead of new business 1. I think it'll be a brief conversation compared to the quicker manner conversation.
I'll second it. I mean, it's fine. I don't think either conversation is gonna be all that long.
Yeah, I think they're both. Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Let's deal with the new business number 2, which is the request to approve the proposed boat and mooring sticker program.
Good morning, good evening. Sorry. I think you all have the proposal in front of you, do you not? You've all seen it. At the August 2nd meeting of the Portsmouth Harbor Commission, Ms. Rossi brought this proposal. We've been discussing doing it. And it's worked very well in Bristol for a very long time. I believe it's 8 years. We would like to ask just that there's one change. It says that we'd like to put the stickers on the stern of the boats. Unfortunately, we have a lot of antique boats in the town of Portsmouth, so people have been a little upset about that. So we discussed it and we've agreed that as long as the stickers are visible to the harbor master, that we think it would be a good idea. As you can see, we're either willing to put it on the fees with the Harbor Commission fund, or we can increase it by the mooring fee by $4 to cover the cost and $5 if they want to have it mailed to them. Does anyone have any questions?
The correspondence says something about out of the, excuse me, out of the moorings fund. How much is that? How much money do we have? Mooring stickers could be $3,035. This could come out of the Harbor Commission Fund. How much is in that fund?
The harbor master budget is funded exclusively by the sticker, excuse me, the mooring fees. So that fund,
Like an
it would, the money's not there unless we raise the fee to $4 to cover the stickers.
Excuse me,
Except-
Mr. Hamilton,
Go ahead.
because we have increased the number of our moorings, we can support that. But we are willing to do whatever you want.
My understanding, Mr. Hamilton, is that the harbor, the sticker program, whatever, part of it actually went into the police department budget to help pay for the,
It's an independent budget underneath the police department.
What's that?
Yes, it's an independent budget. It's a restricted account. The money goes directly to that budget line item.
but it still remains that there should be money in that account. Like the dog fund, there should be money in the harbor account because people every year are paying for their harbor stickers.
Which
or for
goes to fund the harbor master, the assistant harbor master, the gas,
Now the question
the
would be,
replacement of the
is
boat.
that equal? Or are there more funds coming in or is it a negative? And Mr. Hamilton, in all sincerity, I appreciate your assistance on so many occasions, but I'm asking this of the administrator or the finance director. Is there money in the harbor fund?
Yeah, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but there's a positive balance in the harbor fund.
All right,
And
would I be wrong to say it's $10?
no, what was that, Abby?
It's $32,000 to $33,000.
Which
That
is
sounds about
designed
right.
for
It's to
replacement
take-
of boats
replacement of the
or
boats, the
engines.
motors,
Yeah.
the
We
engines.
have one person giving me this answer. Yes,
The money is used for repairing the boat, replacing the motors. It's used for the fuel. It's used for all of that.
but there is still, and you said a number, how much you said was in there?
It's between $32,000 and $33,000.
$32,000 and $33,000, and that's after the expenditures for the harbor, the officer who works.
Yes, that one has nothing to do with the other.
That is what has been built up in the program as the capital reserve fund to replace or repair broken
boat.
equipment. Motor, a new boat. It's not what is left over every year. So each year it's $120,000 roughly, and maybe $4,000 or $5,000 is left over to go into that capital fund. So it's not as if the money is just,
So
it's
we
not a,
built up a $3,000, $5,000 reserve over the period of 8 to 10 years, and now we have $32,000. Is that true? Fair statement? Okay. All right,
the numbers,
that's-
the numbers are not exact, but
Subject to
yes,
order,
right.
subject to
yeah.
order.
So it would be, I would move that we accept the sticker program, but we increase the mooring fee by the $5 to cover it.
It should be self-funding.
Right.
Second.
I mean, I'm not gonna vote against it. I don't believe that this fund, that amount will harm anybody, but it always troubles me when we're charging fees that are not directly related to the activity being covered.
This is directly related.
It
to
is,
activity.
except we have $30,000 slush fund.
We do not have a
Well, but
$30,000
yeah,
slush
so-
fund, because if the
I know,
boat dies,
we're
we have to
talking the
replace it for
capital reserve fund.
$250,000.
Okay.
There's one additional thing that we are asking for, and you can put it in your vote. We need to put it on the harbor master's ordinance. We need to include it
Well,
if you approve it.
Right, we would have to bring the ordinance, do we have to advertise that ordinance? Kevin?
The standard practice is to have one ad for,
Changing the ordinance.
changing any ordinance other than the zoning, which that's statutory.
Okay, so I will amend my motion to advertise for an amendment to the ordinance to reflect this change.
Thank you.
And then we would have to do it at a subsequent meeting.
That's fine.
Mr. Cleason, did you have a question?
Just to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong. This is modeled after Bristol's program. We in Portsmouth require people to put some kind of numbering on their moorings, but not typically on the transom or any part of the boat. And this was will be put in effect to help the harbor master to identify people that are not on their own personal moorings, or people that are, coming through as transits and taking advantage of mooring situations.
That's
Okay.
correct.
There is an end result here.
Yeah, and so we're not even actually talking about the mooring fee, which is a different number, right?
This is gonna add $5 to the mooring fee.
Right.
For the permit, not
But it's,
necessarily the fee.
it's $5 addition on the mooring fee.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
6-0. Thank you all. Okay. Let's move on to number 1. What's that? We're gonna move on to the request conditional tax abatement for Quaker Manor property taxes. Request to maintain the previous tax calculation for fiscal year 22 and prior 5 years, current year fiscal year 23 through 27.
First off, my apologies, Mr. Savany, for prolonging this a couple more minutes.
I think you did it on purpose.
I didn't want to
That's
say that.
okay.
Mr. President,
okay.
before you.
Yep.
Mr. Levesque is recused from this, just
Yes.
so you have it on the record.
Let me reintroduce Mr. Levesque Esquire as the solicitor for the Portsmouth Housing Authority.
You coming to the podium? No.
No,
No.
no. So, Mr. President, members of the council, thanks so much for once again inviting us here so we could ask for some financial relief. Before I start, I've already acknowledged Mr. Levesque, but also in the audience, we got Representative Corcoran, the Vice Chair for the Board of Commissioners. Gary Gump on the board, Charlene Patton sitting back there. Ron Harnois, our 5th, is out of town. He would have loved to be here, but sadly he can't. And also, the principal for our management agent, Phoenix Property Management Company, Mr. Michael Packard. He's also the principal for Sabatis Housing, which is the nonprofit that we're in the process of transferring the Quaker Manor
Mhm.
property to. And that's all within the purview of what HUD refers to as a transfer of physical assets.
Mr. Savany,
Application
can you do me a favor?
process.
Can you just get a little closer so that people at home can hear you?
Yes.
Thanks, sir.
Sure. So anyway, my name is Jim Seveny. I'm the chair of the Portsmouth Housing Authority. I live at 72 McEnroe Lane in Portsmouth. We're here tonight to ask for tax abatement. There was a big change this past tax year. Because we completed the extensive renovations that were started back in 2017. This is the year that the pilot that we were paying our tax obligation under expired. And the real tax bill that's calculated under state law came to us, and that added roughly $18,000 in additional cost to the operations of Quaker Manor. The pilot historically had run on an average somewhere between $10,000 and $11,000. Current tax bill is $29,000. The current financial issues that Quaker Manor faces, I think you're all familiar with. We've been reporting these now in the annual reports to you since the new commission started. We can't afford the additional taxes. In fact, we are not even paying our current month-to-month operations. Much of the brunt of this difficulty has been borne by Phoenix Housing. They have not been able to consistently collect their monthly management fee because frankly, at the end of the month, there is no money to do so. We've been trying to make sure that the utilities, the upkeep, the cost of staff, and the myriad other expenses get covered first. From that financial position, we're requesting that the town of Portsmouth abate the additional property tax obligation, continue to charge Quaker Manor as it has historically under the pilot for a period of 5 years from this current tax year that we're facing, fiscal 23 through fiscal 27. So we're asking this of you, how do we get out of it? How do we get well? As I've already mentioned, we've submitted the HUD application to transfer the property from Quaker Manor LLC, which was the company that was used as a device for the previous property manager to borrow the $1.23 million that they did eventually in order to do the renovations. So the deal with Sabatis Housing is that we will transfer the property to them. Once HUD goes through the application and approves it, we will transfer the property to them. They are, from our own experience as well as HUD's recommendation, and I hope the eventual approval. They are a competent property management organization. They have not several, but many similar properties that are in financial distress of some sort within the HUD family of publicly subsidized housing. And everybody's very comfortable with this transfer. In fact, we really need to be comfortable because that's one of the terms under the settlement agreement with HUD when they brought a suit against us for $150,000 for not filing our annual financial audits. So that's the next step, and we'll get to that. So how do we do this? How do we go from a financial position which is untenable, okay, and it can't continue? It's not working now, and without something substantially different being done, it won't work in the future either. Sabatis is going to restructure the property's finances. There's a whole bunch of methods for doing that with tax exempt bonds and housing tax credits and all that. If you want to get into that kind of detail on the path to getting from where we are to a point in the future within 5 years where we can take on the entire tax obligation for the property, Mr. Packard would be happy to get into the detail on how all this stuff really works, if you wish. And the other thing that it's a little less likely, but a renegotiation of the terms of the RAD. That's the rental assistance demonstration program that we entered into in 2017 that allowed public housing to sort of become privately owned through the Quaker Manor LLC. The sole owner within the LLC being the Portsmouth Housing Authority. How all that worked, I have not a real clear picture on, but I did allow them to borrow more money than they could afford to pay in the monthly debt service, which is almost from the outset has been the case and where we are today. By the end of fiscal 27, Sabatis, by following through with this stuff, including perhaps renegotiating the RAD contract, which doesn't allow over the 20-year term of that contract rental increases. There might be a potential to renegotiate that into something more financially tenable. We'll see. But that is the plan in broad strokes to get us back on a firm financial footing. Okay, that will be, of course, after HUD approves the transfer of the property to Sabatis, and Sabatis now becomes the owner, and they will embark on these actions to improve the financials and bring this back to a viable operation. So the next steps, in order for this to happen, we think we need the 5 years. We must get HUD approval for the transfer. Without that, there really isn't a path forward. Formally, we're asking you for a conditional approval. My understanding is that under state law, you can't simply abate the taxes without some relief from legislation. I know your solicitor has already drafted language. It's already in Representative Corcoran's hands. So in next session in the General Assembly, that'll be brought forward to make allowances to formally authorize this town council to abate those taxes. So that would be the next step. And then naturally Sabatis, Mr. Packard would make regular reports on the progress in implementing these steps to get from where we are to a financial viable operation. So with all that said, the formal request to the council is to approve an abatement, which essentially allows us to continue under the previous pilot agreement that roughly equates to about $11,000 a year in tax payments the property will continue to pay. The remainder, that 17 or 18,000 per year, would be abated for the next 5 years. And that's our request. And with that, I'd just like to say on behalf of all of us, thanks for everything that you've done to date to make all this work, helping us with the auditing fees, just your general support of the whole process has been more than we really could have expected, and we thank you for that. It's too bad we have to be here again asking for more relief, but it is what it is. We really don't have another option. I'd also like to just take the opportunity to acknowledge how much skin in this game Phoenix Property Management has put. Okay, they're north of $90,000 over the past couple of years in terms of unpaid management agent fees. They foot the bill for the legal support for the better part of a year, negotiating with the HUD enforcement lawyers to finally arrive at the settlement that we did last February, to avoid most of that $150,000 fine that they wanted to levy for not providing those audit reports. They certainly bird dogged the auditors to get all those audits in a really ugly business circumstance where the previous records were literally a mess and had to be rebuilt. So, you know, You folks paid for the formal auditing team that was doing the audits. Mr. Packard and his company foot the bill for the auditors that he hired to help the real auditors figure out where this stuff was and put together a financial picture. They were successful. We got the audits done. We got to a reasonable settlement. Phoenix covered the fine that did get levied. I mean, you know, you never get out of this stuff scot-free. And so HUD finally settled with the $20,000 fine. Phoenix covered that along with the legal stuff and the other auditing stuff. So their support, not to mention just the effective day-to-day, month-to-month operations of the place, trying to keep those people warm and safe and, you know, reasonably satisfied with their housing circumstance. You know, I couldn't stand here and not tell you all, you know, how much we appreciate what they've contributed to this whole enterprise. So with that, like I said, we ask for your approval of this abatement. We realize it's a conditional one at this point, and we'll work hard to get HUD to approve that transfer. That is one of the terms under the settlement agreement. They definitely want the Portsmouth Housing Authority out of the business and somebody who knows what they're doing in the business. And thank God for that. So once this stuff is done, we're really confident that the Quaker community, Quaker Manor, Quaker Estates 1, 2, 3, 4, which eventually will be a part of this whole transfer, will be in better hands. They'll be better positioned to keep the infrastructure, the material condition of the place healthy. Not to mention the health and well-being of the residents, making sure they're warm. As you must all know how often there were calls because one or more of the apartments last winter lost their heat. You know, hence the very generous offer to include us in your request for the community block grants. If that money does come through, that all that money will go towards replacing and upgrading the heating units over in that place. So with that said, I'll take any questions you have. I put a lot of stuff in backup just to kind of bring you up on the history. All of this stuff is in the annual reports that we've been sending you. But any questions, any clarifications you need, I'm happy to try and field.
I'm gonna ask a question. It's gonna be a two-part question, but it sounds to me like we need to make two motions to make this happen. One would be to request the abatement of the $18,000 in this year's fiscal budget.
Yeah.
Which would fall underneath the 2.5% uncollectible spread, so it's not a huge deal. But then we would have to make a second motion to approve a pilot from 2023 to 2027 of $11,000, because otherwise next year we would have to abate $19,000. I'm just making a number up because that's, you know, with the tax increase.
Right.
Think you can do it all in one. And then with respect to calling it a pilot, I think this is more appropriately called it's a cooperation. It's,
Okay,
yeah, it's a shelter, it's a rental shelter agreement, it's a cooperation agreement.
but we want to avoid charging them in the future and then having them abate it back off. So it's semantics in the terminology. Okay.
And the cooperation agreement can come with a time frame as part of the motion.
Right, that's what they're proposing, 5
Right.
years.
Right.
Actually, it really, what would implement this is an agreement for a tax abatement program to tax them at 3.75% of the previous year's rent versus 8%, which is under the applicable statute. So that's really all they're asking for on what you need to approve. And then once but the conditional part of it is that the General Assembly will need to grant enabling authority to give its stamp of approval, to give the council authority to actually do. Because there's no existing statute on the books that gives the council the authority to do this particular payment.
Question. Maybe this is for the tax. Matt Halpin. The tax bill that's shown here now, it looks like, I guess I'm confused about the 8% part. It looks like there's already an 8% housing discount or exemption on the current bill. But you're saying you're going to give an additional exemption beyond that.
The 8% is the way the bill is calculated. And it's 8%, it's 8% of the gross rent is what the tax bill would be under the 8% exemption, which is allowed for by Rhode Island general law. What we're talking about is basically using the same methodology, but it'd be the 3.75 going forward.
So you're going to substitute the 3.75 instead of this. And that's where the General Assembly needs to be involved.
They have to give you the authority, yes.
Thank you.
So I will make a motion that we task the solicitor and the town administrator into coming up with a 3.75% cooperation agreement with the Portsmouth Housing Authority. And do we have to include Phoenix?
No.
No. Okay,
At this
with the
point, it's
Portsmouth-
just with the Portsmouth Housing Authority.
Okay,
Second.
until 2027.
Second. Make a simple motion to approve the request conditional upon getting the enabling. Really very straightforward.
Okay.
Just a 3.75% tax rate on the previous year's rent for 5 tax years.
We have a motion and a second. I think there's going to be some discussion. Right? Or do we have a second? Or
Yes,
not?
I second.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I may, just really briefly, first I want to thank you, Mr. Savigny, Ms. Crawford, and everyone who has served and is serving on the Housing Authority. You stepped into that body in 2020 when there was no one on it, and have put in an extraordinary amount of effort to right the ship, so that at some point maybe you can step away and not do this anymore. You thanked the town council for our leadership on this issue over the last, and support over the last few years. And I want to say you're welcome, but the point, I want to point out that this council and prior councils supported the Housing Authority because it's the right thing, it has been and remains the right thing to do, not only for the residents of Quaker Manor, but for the taxpayers of Portsmouth, because to be clear, the alternatives to supporting these efforts is potentially a great deal more financial liability to the town of Portsmouth. So again, thank you for your efforts to make it so we can have a clean setup once it's all done, and hopefully it'll all be done within the next few years. And this is the right thing to do, again, just for Quaker Manor and its residents, and for the taxpayers of Portsmouth. Thank you.
I would also like to thank Senator Savigny and Representative Corcoran, Mr. Cumberland, the entire committee for being willing to step into this financial explosion and being willing to basically throw themselves on it and put out the fire.
Thank you.
Help them, some of the most vulnerable citizens of Portsmouth, and we definitely appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you. Couldn't have been done without your help.
I think we have another comment coming up from behind you. Oh. One at a time. Don't fight over the microphone. No, you first. Go ahead. Duncan, you can be next.
Tom Grave, 110 Third Drive. I also want to say that this was a problem, a very large problem, quite frankly, that needed to be solved, and I'm glad to see it solved. There's one participant that has not been singled out for any sort of accolades tonight that I think needs to be, and that's the town taxpayer. We spent $50,000 for the lawyer / auditor. We gave $2.4 million worth of property on the tax rolls to a company to take over for $1.2 million of debt. We are providing, assuming we get it, $400,000 from the town's CBDG grant to this. And we've just given a tax abatement of $100,000. I add that up to about $1.75 million that the taxpayer has provided to get out of this problem. And I think they need to be congratulated as well. The one thing that I'm concerned about is that this same largesse will be visited upon Quaker Estates, which is not in the same problem. And it does not need to be. And I want you guys to think about that in the future, because I'm sure it's coming up. Thank you.
Duncan Ingram, just a quick math question. What?
Address.
My 55 Sigourney Road, Portsmouth, Rhode Island, 02871. I just was looking at the numbers and it looked like they were paying 1.3 million for 40 units. That's $32,500 per unit. Just from the little stuff I saw. So has it been considered to try to sell it for $50 a unit or something like that to another investor? I don't know. That's why I asked, is it on the market? It's not, has not been on the market. So I don't know. I just, 32,500 is pretty cheap per unit in this town for rental. I don't care where they are. All right, certainly subsidized housing.
I can kind of answer that. First of all, you can't do that because it's a HUD program and we're under a contract for 20 years. And secondly, part of the transfer process requires that the existing use and function as low-income subsidized housing continues. Okay, this was HUD property back before it was transformed into Quaker Manor LLC. And now we're on the threshold of getting HUD's permission to transfer it to a nonprofit that must operate the property in similar fashion as is currently being used. If we don't do that, it's a violation of the settlement agreement. And what would happen after that? Who knows? What I can tell you quite factually is HUD has lots and lots of lawyers. Okay. In terms of the valuation of the property and all that, we can all read in the audit report. But I'll just add this, after depreciation, which factors prominently, given the condition of all the properties, it's worth about 1.3 million, which is currently about the level of indebtedness that Sabattis Housing will be assuming under the purchase and sale agreement and the terms that are codified in HUD's application for transfer. So yes, you know, I'm right there with everybody else. Thank you to the taxpayers. In fact, you can thank the taxpayers for everything that we do. And certainly support of the elderly and the disabled folks that living up in Quaker Manor and Quaker Estates. I'm sure they're equally thankful for the support that the town and everybody else provides so that they have a decent place to live. So.
Thank you, Mr. Stephanie. So we have a motion and a second. There's no comments online. Right? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, moving on to, we have correspondence.
Move to receive and place on file.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And then next, future meetings. September eleventh, September twenty-fifth at 7 PM in council chambers, and then October tenth is our Tuesday meeting. And tentatively is our October 14th is Prudent Silent on the Saturday. We'll schedule that, we'll figure out the time.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. See everyone